Welcome everybody, Kia ora, to this webinar. My name is Xingdong Yan. Sitting next to me is Judith. We'll go around and introduce the panelists today. And the topic today is the future of accounting education. What an exciting topic to be talking about at this time of the year in particular, and also this stage of the accounting industry disruption, and having great people like our panelists today to come together and contribute and discuss the topic. So what I'll do now is to have our panelists to introduce themselves. I think we'll start with Amanda. Amanda, would you like to kick it off, please?
Yeah, earlier they voted me to be first. So hi everybody, my name is Dr. Amanda White. I am a senior lecturer here at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I guess I'm also the face of Amanda. Well, I am Amanda from Amanda Loves to Audit on YouTube. So some people might know me from there other than my day job.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, Amy.
Hi, so my name's Dr. Amy McCormack and I'm a lecturer in accounting from Flinders University. I've been teaching here for about 3 years now, and I teach everything from the first years to the second years to third years and master's students. So I'm used to covering a whole range of students and backgrounds in my classroom.
Hello, Maha.
Hi everyone, so I'm Maha from Xero. So I work across our, engagement across the education sector. Previously come from accounting professional bodies as well, so been in the accounting sector for a while, so not so much as an educator, but more student support and engagement with students across Australia, accounting students across Australia, so being really active and supportive of, these kind of talks amongst all of us. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. Hello, Judith.
Yeah, and I'm Judith. I'm from AccountingPod, and we're the technology company seeking to connect the cloud business to the educators, giving them tools and content to help their students move into this amazing and exciting digital age. You know, I have a standard joke in my presentations, which Amanda has heard. You know, I was told by a lecturer that their students are pulling out of accounting courses because it's boring. And, you know, I say, well, actually, I always thought that was audit.
Audit is never boring with me or Amanda, I'm sure. Our students find it even entertaining. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for creating the tension here, Judith. Warfare. I'm really excited about the topic today, and also the panelists we have here to discuss. I know Judith, Amanda, Amy all have practical industry experience as well, in addition to what the work you are doing now, and Maha brings to the table the experience in the education sector. So I feel like we have the depth and knowledge to have a really good discussion today. So let's get started.
Fantastic.
Thank you everybody for being here today as well. So how it's going to run today is that we'll have some major topics we want to cover off, about 3. Start with setting the scene, just looking at what's going on right now, and then thinking about the opportunities, the challenges and the opportunities that come with those challenges, and then do a bit of a crystal ball gazing and thinking about with the future, what we want the future to be, I guess, and then kind of wrap it up. And then we'll take some questions from the audience to finish off. Yeah. So the first topic I'd like to put to the panelists today is let's talk about what's happening in accounting education in Australia universities right now, by breaking that into 2 components. First of all, what's working really well and what's not. So Amanda, would you like to start?
I guess what I'm seeing, and I've just come back from a trip to Melbourne where I was invited to talk down at the University of Melbourne, and I communicate with academics from all over. And I think what is happening within our area is there's a huge amount of variation. So we still see a lot of traditional accounting and debits and credits on the paper and the T accounts, and I think that's still important. But then we see varying levels of use of technology. We see varying levels of employability skills being embedded into the curriculum. Variation across universities, and then even variation within universities. So you'll have people like myself who are very much forward-thinking in terms of education, and I'm in an industry that changes quite rapidly and is changing with technology. So I'm very much thinking about how does my education offering need to change to keep up with that. But, in something like introductory accounting, I'm seeing less of that variation and less of that move forward. And in terms of what's working, I think, we still do traditional accounting really, really well. We're doing lots of different things to engage students and assess them in different ways. But I don't think consistently across the board we're embedding the use of technology in accounting really consistently. And I think if some people might know Heather Smith, Heather is a cloud accounting blogger and a bit of a guru. And she said on LinkedIn the other day that, well, what we really need to do is we need to make sure that when we are teaching students about accounting technology, we're teaching them the latest of what's available, not a desktop solution that was 20 or 30 years ago, that we're giving them current information. And I don't think that we need to educate students on every single cloud accounting app out there, but I think having that practical experience helps build up those employability skills. And that's really what it's all about. We want our students to be able to go out there and get great jobs to build great careers in accounting.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Amanda. Amy, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I really agree with what Amanda said. It's kind of like universities recognize where they want to be at and then go, we want a curriculum that's filled with technological innovations, both in terms of the teaching delivery itself and in terms of what the students are learning for when they're getting out there in the workforce. And they've got that on paper, like this is what we want to do. But of course, bridging the gap from where we've traditionally been at with the pen and paper, journal entries and T accounts, and working out how to convert this on that kind of topic by topic basis and get it to where we want it to be is where there's still a bit of a gap at the moment. So we know where we want to be at, but it's a matter of getting the time and the resources to slowly make those changes and embed that properly into the classroom. And I've been seeing improvements in the last few years with how this has been happening. There is an increased focus now on going, hey, let's get students doing work integrated learning and actually get them out there doing placements and having a go at this stuff in real life. Obviously this year there's been a new introduction at Flinders and we've started teaching Xero in the curriculum as well to give students some additional exposure there as well to, real life accounting software. As I said, cloud is very important now, so let's learn some of those solutions. And not just to tick a box either and go, oh, we've learned a bit about how to use Xero now, but sometimes it's about that process as well, because we don't just want to be teaching students the technical skills like, how to debit this, how to credit that, how to click on that. They also need to learn the skills of how to learn new skills. And I think that's something that we're increasingly putting into the curriculum now. So by having some of these new innovations in the curriculum, it's not just about learning the innovation themselves, but that process of learning something new, of feeling that slight discomfort zone as we go through that. And I think that's something that's getting increasingly embedded into accounting education today. So I think there's still quite a distance to go to get to our perfect vision. And I agree with Amanda's point that the implementation sort of is a bit variable at the moment across universities and topics, but hoping we'll be getting there one step at a time.
Right. What I'm picking up is the intention is there. We want to be able to do all these amazing things, but how do we bridge that gap? And also at the same time, we need to, as you comment on how do we make sure that it's not about learning the tool for the sake of learning the tools, but actually picking up the skills, right? Problem solving skills, there's critical thinking skills, using those tools to solve problems. So I'd like Maha to add to, I guess, these two aspects, from the businesses who are building products that perspective, Maha.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree with both of you on what it's what I've kind of seen in the industry as well. And one thing that I've really picked up is there's a lot of interest from the academia, from the lecturers to be involved and have I guess have these different technologies embedded as part of their courses, their curriculum, and the issue, I guess the gap that I'm seeing is the ability and the time to actually focus on learning these new technologies for the lecturers themselves. So I think this is something that I'm really identifying at the moment is they have the interest, they've got the ambitions, they can see why it's important, but they just actually don't have time to go in and actually practice themselves and actually understand these new technologies. So from our perspective, it's something that I can see at Xero that we can do a lot more in helping our, I guess, accounting education sector, the academia understand and really share our experiences with all these cloud ecosystem apps that come through for the accounting sector, for the advisory sector, for the small business sector. Sharing that kind of knowledge is, I think, something that we can probably do a bit better. Because I can see there's that interest, they just don't really have the time to research it, to be honest. They're doing a million other things. And yeah, so that's something that I've really put a goal for us to really do, is be able to educate the education sector a bit more about these new and upcoming apps, making their jobs slightly easier, really.
I think that's an interesting point, Maha, because what you'll find is that a lot of academics also don't necessarily come from a practitioner background anymore.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think in my undergraduate program, I think there's only 2 of us that have actually worked in audit or accounting at the coalface and have some experience with this. So it definitely is a steep learning curve for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I guess that's a great segue into me making a comment from the AccountingPod perspective. Our vision is absolutely to be able to do that, to be able to plug the academic into the cloud technology and solutions, right? So because we early adopted on cloud in 2007, we have a sense that what we're seeing now in education is that same kind of adoption journey. I'd be interested in that, your comments on this, but I can see how we are taking some academics on an incredibly steep journey of change. So I guess we're like change agents as we plug in. So we, from our AccountingPod technology point of view, how do we really help with that? But at the same time, the students know about these products and are asking for them. So you've got the student tension, and then we're hearing from the workplace, hey, we need these people doing all the, able to do these things as they come out. So there's that work readiness thing, but it will take some time. So I guess we're focused on, how can we help to accelerate that process, right? As much as possible, but taking a bit of that tension out of the...
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've kind of started talking about what we wanted to discuss next. The challenges, right? It's always fun talking about challenges. So there's a variability in what people do in the sector, right? Maybe each lecturer is doing whatever they want to do. There's heavily paper-based. The expectation of lecturers to become super users, perhaps it's not realistic. So let's talk about some of the challenges you can see. Would you like to start, Amy?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of challenges in higher education in general today. So stepping outside of accounting per se, there's increasing pressures facing the higher education industry as a whole, which of course then impacts us in accounting as much as any other area. So I think identifying this time gap that we've just been talking about, Maha saying how she's noticed academics are time poor. Yes, that's very, very true these days. And it is a big challenge about bridging those gaps. And that comes back to that earlier point about, here's where we want to be at, but how do we get there? Because we need to change to get there, and change does take time. That's one of the challenges of change. We need to learn new things. We need to have time to play around, time to implement. And that is increasingly difficult in the higher education at the moment, because there is a lot more pressure on academics in terms of teaching loads. And when you spend all your time doing the teaching, it's hard to take that step back to make things better, to make those improvements that we want to make that would then actually improve that next teaching delivery. So it is certainly a big challenge to work out how to bridge that gap from where we are to where we want to be when that does take time. It's also, I think, difficult when, you know, academia can be that little bit isolated from industry more than what we'd like. And note Amanda's point about, you know, a lot of academics don't have much of a practitioner background, and that's very true. And I've got a bit of a background in tax and a bit in research, but again, even I don't have the practitioner background I would like to have to be teaching some of these aspects to my students. I mean, in a medical school, we don't have people who aren't practicing doctors teaching how to do heart transplants, right? They have to be out there doing it still. And it would be great to see that come about in higher education, where we acknowledge that accounting is a very vocational kind of field. And it'd be good to be able to have more links with our academic staff, such as myself, you know, being able to do some of that practitioner work still to then bring that experience back into the classroom. Because trying to blend those two together, you know, the theory out the textbook and what's actually happening, I feel is one of the really big challenges.
Okay. Amellia, do you have some comments to add from an educator's point of view?
Yeah, I think Amy's point in, you know, time is the biggest one. And I think it was 2015, Phil Hancock and a number of others, Phil's the dean at, I think, UWA, or Associate Dean Teaching and Learning at UWA. And when accounting academics were asked how much teaching and learning was valued by their institution or by their faculty and its importance in promotion, teaching and learning rated very low. So I think it was like, you know, only 30% of people thought that teaching and learning was really valued in that process of promotion, and that making significant change in educational offerings often isn't given the workload credit that you require to investigate and to do it well and to drive it from a pedagogical basis. So I think we're seeing the need for more of an evidence-based approach to improvements in teaching and learning. And I know that certainly at UTS, we're trying to grapple with this workload issue. Because, you know, quite often we talk about workload in terms of hours face-to-face, but we don't talk about the marking time, the preparation time that would go into that. So one of those challenges is definitely structural models that sit within faculties, within universities. And someone was saying, you know, universities are really big ships. Trying to get them to change direction in certain areas can be really, really, really difficult. And so, you know, even asking academics to become more engaged with the community, with our industry, can be really difficult. I did offer one of my colleagues the opportunity to observe quarter-end consolidation at a company that consolidated over 500 subsidiaries internationally, because this person taught consolidation. I said, you know, go for a day, ask them a whole bunch of questions, and they just weren't interested. They were more interested in focusing on their research, because that's, in a lot of universities, one of the key performance indicators. And so trying to get people to put that extra time, the people who are dedicated educators are always going to do it. They're going to work outside of hours to do it, but it's sort of lifting everybody in that game. And I think one of the challenges is rethinking who we are as a profession. So as in academia, we don't have an idea of what that means to be part of this profession. A lot of people think it's research, some people think it's teaching, some people think it's the mix of both of those, but it's really thinking about who are we as our professional identity. And if we're supposed to be professionals in research, then we also need to train our junior academics, our doctoral candidates, our research students in the pedagogy of education as well, so that when they go out there to jobs, that they're making good decisions about assessment, about learning design, about even choosing the right way to teach students, or the way that best suits their students. There's so much more than, you know, when I talk to a lot of junior academics in Melbourne, I said, well, how do you figure out how to be a good academic? And I said, well, I just do the things that I really enjoyed other academics doing. But that doesn't open up to a whole range of other tools and possibilities. So there are definitely some structural issues and things around professional identity that will really influence the future. And if the government funding model goes towards quality of teaching and learning experiences, that could really result in a big change in our area.
Okay.
I don't know whether it'll work or not. In the UK, they've tried it and it seems to have failed miserably.
Yeah.
When the regulator said, oh, well, no, we've been trying to measure this, but it doesn't really do what we think it does.
Okay. We'll have a chat about that in the opportunity topic. So I want to pick up this topic of change. And also I want to come back to Amanda, Amy later, just around this topic of student as the customer, some challenges around that.
Oh, I don't like that word.
I know.
No, but it's an increasing thing.
Oh.
Let's talk about change. Obviously, acknowledging that the structural change, those big changes, we can't do everything from, I guess, the services provider's point of view or from the product provider's point of view. But what can we do to help with change, managing change?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of a couple of things, and I want to raise the big hairy thing here. You're talking about a resourcing change, and that's in time and energy and retraining and changing models. But it's also, let's come back and talk about the money required to change as well. It is going to cost money to change, isn't it? So just like you pull down a building and rebuild a new one, likewise when there is change going on in an organisation, it's going to cost something, right? And we've had some very interesting conversations about this, because maybe, there's a conversation, a really pragmatic conversation that has to be had from the perspective of education technology in particular, which is where I'm coming from. How are the tertiaries thinking about resourcing for the change agents, which we see as the rise of education technology, in the same way that we're seeing the rise of fintech. Their model's like, okay, what can we do that allows us to click the ticket again somewhere? And you've just seen Facebook, think about doing that and can bring themselves into a bank, and they'll be clipping the transactional credit somewhere. But in education, right, it's always been known to be a very tight sector for funding. How can we move and accelerate at the speed we need to go at to meet the needs of the workforce who is today, or like a month ago in the UK, Deloitte says we need candidates who can work alongside the robots. My thinking is we already have technology platforms in the business world that are like robots. They're already AI enabled. So how do we resource for the change? And who is talking about it and who should be talking about it, right? I guess we start here. Okay, I can see Amanda getting excited.
I feel like I am shouting into the void a lot of times when it comes to funding. So, we have constraints in Australia about our higher education regulation, which says we can't ask students to buy something that must be for assessment. But then there are sort of weird inaccuracies that go along with that. So if you asked a fashion design student, they would be buying all of the materials, all of fabrics, all the special treatments or dyes or whatever it might be that would go into their final product and their final project for a major assessment. In business faculties, I don't know if this is the same with you, Amy, we're often told to teach with us in a textbook. It'd be like saying to a chemistry professor, okay, teach chemistry without any chemicals. And I think as we move more towards education technology and ingraining technology into the way we teach, I think we need to rethink how we fund education. And business faculties, commerce faculties especially, I think in most of them we might keep 30 cents in every dollar that we make. and that goes to fund cross-subsidization of other areas, which means our budgets are very lean. And I think universities, especially at the top level, need to rethink how we go about providing education, and the fact that, yes, with the improvements of technology, free versions of stuff is just, in a lot of circumstances, not going to cut it when we want to give students deep understanding and learning with those tools.
Let's hear from Maha.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree with all those comments. It's something that, so we're obviously in the space of Xero Learn, so recently come out to market and reaching different universities, as you guys are at AccountingPod. And, the common kind of discussions that I'm having is, oh yeah, this looks great, we would love to do this. And even for universities who've been using Xero on a 30-day free trial version, they're like, yeah, this is great, we've been using Xero for a while, and the 30-day free trial doesn't really work because it doesn't give us the capacity to really assess our student work and to really give the students that better understanding and learning inside of Xero. But it's that funding that really cuts that conversation really quickly. It's like, oh, well, we've never paid for it. We don't know where we can even find that line of budget that even funds this. And so this is definitely a question that I think a challenge that we've been facing. And I'm sure that, all of you guys have seen it come through. It's that, what can we from the technology side do to really help you guys address those questions as well, and actually be able to kind of talk to whoever needs to be spoken to. It's why this is important, and why it's important that students move away from a 30-day free trial, because it's not going to give them the ability to really, do the work they want to do, but also to have that extended kind of assessment period in there, because I don't even know how those academics are assessing in that 30-day free trial account at Xero. So yeah, it's something that it's definitely a challenge for me and I'm sure for you guys as well. So it's been really interesting, because as Xero Learn has come out, previously all the educators that did use Xero, it was through that 30-day trial. So it's been interesting kind of discussions with them, because we're talking about, well, what's the value add of now having to pay for Xero Learn? And even though the cost is really, it's not a large cost at all, but what happens when there's content involved, and that's when AccountingPod really comes in, is it's time and money, and that's where we're really trying to figure out that sweet spot. Is that, okay, well, at what point is it okay for you to be spending the money, because you're not spending as much time in doing something else? So if we're giving you more free time to be able to go out and do more research and able to upskill yourself and learn this amazing new technologies, how can we really support? So yeah, these are discussions we're having at the moment, the challenges that I think that the industry is facing itself, and same with the ed tech industry. I think for AccountingPod and for Xero, these are two big challenges that we're facing at the moment, trying to work out, I think.
What's the secret, Amy?
Yes.
I think we do need to have some more awareness like that at the university level. As you said, that, okay, sure, it's accounting, but that doesn't mean it's just book, lecture, tute, go. We do now need these additional resources, as you're saying, like the fashion students, like the chemistry students, right? We need extra resources too. And I think perhaps it's a matter of trying to pitch that longer term view. If you think about, what a student's worth at the university, and attrition and all these problems we talk about, really in perspective, the cost of something like implementing Xero Learn is very, very small, comparatively speaking. It's just more a matter of getting systems in place so that we can have this incorporated with our teaching. And I think your earlier comments, Amanda, about workload really play into that as well, because academics' time is also money for the university, right? Those two things go together. And it's hard when workloads might not take into account the difference between going, I'll teach this topic and I will put a lot of extra time into innovating in what I'm going to do with this topic. And until we have some distinction there between just teaching, so to speak, and really spending that extra time innovating and rewarding that appropriately, there's always going to be a disincentive for academics to try and do new things, to do innovative things without quite having the support there. And it's just hard with, a large organisation like a university. It takes time for these processes to get put in place, for people to learn and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is something we need to do. So again, I think it's these small incremental steps where we're slowly getting there.
And I've been really amazed by the kind of care, Amy, you provided to your students. You know,
Oh, thanks.
working firsthand with you, it's been really great to see. So for us, I guess, you know, we feel the tension between, you know, really good student outcome, affordability, and also at the same time trying to build a sustainable business, right? You know, really help people, help lecturers, help students, you know. So we went to the showcase in Melbourne on Monday to a group of, I think most of them are VCs, you know, C-level people at universities. So it was amazing to see the Monash's new platforms and buildings coming out.
Beautiful buildings.
Beautiful buildings,
yes,
amazing buildings.
Enhancing learning.
Correct,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
It's all fantastic things happening in industry. And someone made a comment about what the sole purpose of EdTech founders is to help to manage change, because everything we want to do, every conversation we have is about making changes in your life, right? Whether it's to convince someone to change the budget or change the curriculum, change something, change this. Yeah, so a change, we live with change every day. So I want to bring us to this, to the students just for a moment, and hearing from Amanda and Amy, you know, your comments and experience in seeing, I guess, maybe changes in student behavior, in you know, yeah, in this age.
I guess the one thing I've noticed is that students now really are used to flipped learning. So especially school leavers who are coming into university now, flipped learning is not a new thing to them. And when they get to university and they don't get a lot of it, there's like, well, where's the video? Where's the lecture capture? Why isn't there, you know, supporting resources to go with things? And so the risk then, if we don't provide them, is they go off to search for their own and they don't get the right information. Certainly, I would imagine in my ideal world that a student would come to university, we'd give them a Xero license for the entirety of their degree. That they'd be able to use Xero in first year. They'd be able to use, you know, some sort of API integration in second year to do management accounting analysis, whether that's through inflow or something else. That in the financial statement and valuation subjects, they'd again be able to pull out data from these systems and manipulate. The same in audit. And, you know, those sorts of areas, I think, are where we need to think really big picture, I think, is the key moving forward. And that's hard to do. And I know that a lot of us are sort of doing it off our own initiative, and we're doing the extra work even though our workload doesn't allow or, you know, fit that in there. I think that that's probably how we're going to get real change coming in the future. And it's going to be students who come to a university because they hear of a really great experience. And I've talked about a lot online about how as content becomes decentralized and content moves away from the control of the universities, then what universities need to provide is a fantastic learning experience. Not necessarily the content, but the experience. And I think the faster that we can move to that way, the faster students will see the value in coming to university, and then employers will see that value as well, that they're not just little content silos that we ship out to them, that they're able to do those higher order skills. And I think that students know that to get a job, they're going to need to do more. And if anything, I don't know if anybody's seen the new LinkedIn learning platform that's coming. You're going to be able to, it'll tell you, hey, people in your industry have these sorts of skills. They've got Xero skills. They've got data analytics skills. They've got Power BI. They've got Tableau skills. And you're going to realize, well, hang on, I'm not getting those. How do I get those? And obviously LinkedIn Learning is using that as a way to sell their offering. But for us as academics, we should be using this sort of research to say, well, hang on, is this something our students should be looking at? Do we need to think more about employability of our graduates? And that's certainly a key factor for students when they're looking at degrees. They're looking at employability. Who gets a job from that institution or coming out of that program? So I know that universities often say, oh, look, we're not really about producing students for jobs. more about higher order thinking skills that you can apply to any career, I think especially in accounting, that's going to become really important to us. And that's important to students. That's the thing they're asking at careers fairs, when they come to somewhere like UTS. They're saying, what jobs are available? And what skills will I need? Will I get all of the Excel training? Will I get all of the Xero training to be able to go out there and get a job and land that job against heaps of other candidates? Because we know that certainly as automation moves forward, that a lot of lower level jobs that were entry level for grads don't exist anymore.
Yeah, so to add on to that for you, we've had a number, like I get on a daily basis, I would say, maybe 10 or more just emails coming through from students, so on LinkedIn or even via the Xero website, and personally from students that know me, accounting students, who contact me on how they can get that Xero training, which is so remarkable to think that they're actually reaching out to someone at the company to find out, hey, how can I get skilled instead of their lecturer or their university, which is, so it's something that I'm seeing coming out a lot. But on second to that, I just want to quickly talk a bit about the vocational sector and what's happening in the vocational sector, because I think they're going through a massive change in the Cert 4 for accounting and bookkeeping. And they've got a great subject in there called Introduction to Cloud Computing Businesses, which is a fantastic subject essentially that focuses on those apps. So it's a subject that really focuses on cloud apps and how an accountant or a bookkeeper, and it'd be so amazing to see something like that just come out in higher ed as well, where that is like a mandatory as part of the accounting degrees, where they go through and research all the cloud apps. So it's really great seeing that coming out of the vocational sector, but also in high schools. So we've got, the uptake of Xero in high schools is really, really high. And it's pretty, so I didn't think it would happen when I started this role. I thought it might be a lot more slower than higher ed or vocational, but actually I'm seeing it's kind of the opposite. It's a really high uptake of school teachers who are like, yeah, let's do this. And it might be because it's easier to kind of implement in a school compared to a big university. But just the fact that students who are now just going to be school leavers have already gone through and used Xero and use all these really cool apps in their classrooms are coming out to universities going, hey, what happened? I was doing all of this at school, but not really at my uni, which is, it's been really interesting. But that vocational kind of, that Cert 4 in accounting, bookkeeping, and seeing that subject kind of come out to life, that cloud computing subject, it's really pretty amazing, and it'd be awesome to see that in higher ed accounting degrees.
So a new catalyst for change, right? High school students. Amy, let's hear from you.
Actually, I was just interested in Maha's point about that, because I know that Xero is bringing out new student certification, something new that was coming out, and I think that's a great idea because it's addressing these things we're talking about, with having that bit extra, bit of micro-credentialing going on, and adds that bit of value add to a student CV. And I mean, as soon as I even mention that in my classroom, you see them go and sit up all of a sudden and go, oh, wait, this is something I can add to my CV. This is good. So I can see there's some real interest from the students around that, even when with Learning Xero as part of our curriculum in financial accounting issues this semester. They seem really interested in the idea that, I've heard about this. This is something that's out there and I'm getting to do it. Not only that, but I've noticed there from our student body, they've been really proactive about asking, can we learn about this? So we've got our Flinders Business Student Society here, and they've actually approached me and said, hey, can you just run like a 1-hour workshop and teach us a little bit about Xero? Because we've got students, not just in our BCom degree, but in all of our Bachelor of Business degrees who want to know about this. So of course, again, despite workload stuff, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to give a workshop and chat about this, because there's interest there from the students. And I think it's really great to see them being proactive about that.
Yeah, totally. I guess on top of that student certification side, it's been the main reason that really came out was because of that, those inquiries that we get from students. Is students are constantly talking to us and approaching us about, like, how do we get certified? Can we do this? Can we learn Xero? What can we do? And it's as part of that, we've kind of said, okay, you know what? We definitely will make it available to your educators. We'll give it out to partners of Xero Learn and say, hey, here's how your students can access and become certified with Xero. So yeah, that's been a real good success for us actually. It's something that we've all been finding for across in New Zealand and Australia. So it's been a really good win that we've been able to make that available, which has been awesome. So yeah, we're seeing good success coming out. So hopefully we'll see that being implemented for semester 2 this year across most universities and schools and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great for them to not just be able to say, you know, I did some stuff in Xero as a part of my degree, but it just adds it as that kind of that separate thing, doesn't it? Where they can say, yes, I've done my degree, but then I've got these additional sort of certifications on top of that. And I think the more of that we can sort of value add in and around our degrees, the better it is for students.
Yeah, okay, certainly something we have been talking about. I think it was around 2016 we had this discussion about we're looking at building competency on our learning journey marking with and support with AccountingPod. So isn't it nice to give some kind of recognition of that at the end of that journey where there's been a demonstrated competency existed. We can kind of see how that certification is like, you know, there's the theory exam for the product itself. So it's a really exciting thing. Same conversations we've been having probably every place we're going is once again the tension of the student, what the student is asking for, and how can you respond to that in a really effective way. And once again the challenge of the digital age, because that story is going to get out there and the pressure again will come on to the institutions about how is that going to be managed, you know. So it's going to be an interesting space for a period of time as that's rolled out, Maha, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, so it'll be really interesting to see how semester 2 goes, but at the initial kind of communication that we've had with all our Xero Learn partners, it's just been amazing. Everyone's been really excited about it, and I think it's going to just give the students that incentive to really complete the work in class, but also to have that, you know, that CV to add it onto their LinkedIn as that micro kind of credential. It's awesome. So we've been really happy that's come out. It's been a really good success actually.
Yeah, we were in a lecture from a professor in the US. We were in Boston at a Learn Launch event, and the comment was made, we've been a survey of the job descriptions over time for business and accounting roles and how that had changed, and the noticeable change was around defined technical skill ability on particular platforms. So the options for the tertiaries is how can we move towards this, right? Do we bolt it on at the end and maybe charge the students what they were talking about, last mile training, or do we think about how it could be blended through, and as a result of it really power up those the features of those platforms in terms of for learning purposes, that really deep experiential experience, you know, that means that student comes out as the thinker and the problem solver. That's what we're really interested in. What you do with those platforms, you know, beyond the person that maybe interacts at the transactional level. So it's a really interesting thing.
Right. So we shall not talk about students as customers. Is that right? Did I get that message right? Amanda and Amy?
You read it correctly. It doesn't necessarily mean we're agreeing with that concept.
No.
This kind of thing.
But what I'm hearing is that I think, you know, Amanda, you've been shouting for change, and I think you're not alone, right? So I think everybody here in this conversation wants to make changes, and we have students who are in touch with what the industries want, demanding change at the same time. So it's about how do we speed up this change as a community, right? So how do we work together as a community to speed up that change? I think that's the thing we need to focus on. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is we can't, want to combine the last two topics, the opportunities and the future. I feel like the opportunities are the future is the opportunities. Let's talk about that, and then we'll wrap up. So, yeah, so who would like to start?
I just had to make a comment on that student as a customer angle.
Okay, right.
I think there's two ways to take that. One of them is in a very positive sense and one is in a negative sense. It just depends on the interpretation. So on the positive side with student as a customer, that can mean listening to what the students want. And that's like I'm all for, right? Student feedback, hearing how are they telling us they would like to learn? How are they, telling us how they'd like things to be integrated into uni, what works for them today in the changing environment of higher ed. And that's something I'm all for and I think is really valuable. I always have, anonymous surveys open during semester where students can feel free to leave feedback. So I can even change my teaching as I'm going. I'm always asking them in class, is this working for us? Is this not working? Let's vote where we're going to go from here. I like to try to shape what I'm doing in response to what's working for them so we can make the learning experience better. So that aspect of student as a customer, totally for. The negative connotation, which is my way sort of this reaction a little low from myself and Amanda as well, perhaps, is when we start taking that customer angle too far and saying we must do everything the student wants because they're the ones that are paying the fees. That's not quite right because, of course, we need to be offering a quality educational experience and teaching can be a bit like parenting in that, sometimes there's things you need to do for the good of the student, even if they don't see that or believe in that at the time. So there's always that balance then around that kind of concept. So that's my sort of interpretation of that comment.
Yeah, I agree because a lot of students think that education is something that is done to them. Whereas really when you come to university or any other higher education provider, what we're providing is the opportunity for you to have a learning experience. And whether students decide to engage or not, sometimes we can make that more attractive, we can assign marks to that, but whether students choose to engage is really where they get their value from. And if they choose to engage a lot, that'll give them a different experience than if they choose to disengage and think, oh, how can I get through and do the bare minimum? So I definitely think, when we talk about opportunities in the future, I'm really thinking about how can we work smarter, right? One of the areas of this is in something like Xero and what AccountingPod are offering, rather than every single university create its own data sets and create its own assignments, then let's leverage off the work that's happening at AccountingPod to be able to then spend more time doing something else. And, it's not just in areas like with Xero, it's even in things like flipped learning. So for a lot of universities that have moved to flipped learning, every single first year coordinator that I've spoken to that has done this has lamented about the process of making videos on flipped learning in introductory accounting. I'm not an expert in making a video. How do I know if I'm engaging or not? Why don't we engage one centralized body to make a fantastic set of flipped learning activities and materials that everybody can use, and then we can free up those academics to use that time to do something else with student learning. And I think that, that's where I've seen a lot of my value. I know plenty of academics are using my resources that I'm putting online for students around audit so that they don't have to, so that they can then leverage their free time to build more exciting cases or class activities or whatever it might be. And I think it becomes really unusual because academics are very wary of using someone else's work, except when it comes to textbooks. Now, certainly I don't say, well, maybe we should have textbook publishers doing this, but maybe the Australian Business Deans Council needs to, take charge and develop a set of flipped learning materials for Finance 101, for Econ 101, for Accounting 101, for Marketing 101, so that we're all not reinventing the wheel. And, you can use the bits and pieces that you like. You can make additional material that might go with that. But for me, the future, I hope, is about working smarter, not necessarily everybody doing the same thing. And hopefully we'll get to that collegiate point where, people will feel comfortable in using the work of a recognized expert or a body of experts And for me, the future is really pushing that funding change and pushing that idea of we're changing the experience, right? Let's make flipped learning materials that we create open access to everybody. And therefore, then let's draw students in on the quality of the experience that we provide them. And that means that also we need to have dedicated teachers. We need to have academics who are valued for their skill in teaching, because quite often that skill is one that is not overlooked. That is overlooked a lot when we're looking at positions and descriptions. It's qualities about research and then, a basic level of teaching. But hey, if we can really engage students, we can transition them from wherever they come from into university, we can make them feel like they belong, then they're going to engage and they're going to have that great experience, whether it's online or whether it's in person. And that move to the future of introduction of technology to blend those two, I think is going to be really important. And the micro-credentialing.
Great. Amy.
Did I cover everything? Sorry, Amy.
No. I totally agree with that point where I stand in the lecture theatre and I think, why do we still do this? Because this comes from back in the day before we had recording systems, and the only way to deliver content to students was to walk into a big hole and tell it to this year's students. And the next year to walk back in that hole and tell it to the next year's students. And then I think, well, now we're recording all of this. Why are we doing this again each year? And not just within that, but why am I doing this? And then why are you doing that? And someone else is doing that when it's all similar content in those same subject areas. I mean, with globalization now and technology, why can't we have one person who's really, really good at making that content awesome? They create this one perfect set of resources that we could then use, which can then bring our time in the classroom, that value add as educators to being about the interactivity, with then working with that. Okay, then we've seen these awesome videos, great, but now what can we do right here, one-on-one, to troubleshoot, to work through this in a much more applied way? And that would be such a greater use of time. Like you're saying, work smarter. This would be the thing. And yet that's such a hard thing, I guess, to implement, because we're not just talking about within an institution, but this is cross-institutionally that we're looking at here. So we do need to have this this greater purpose of a common goal of going, right, what can we do with open access materials to then focus on that value add in our classroom? And I think that is going to be a real opportunity moving forward. And if we just start out within our own topics and institutions, being able to, reuse materials from year to year and keep working on that value add side of things in the class.
I feel like we need to be Kevin Costner a little bit from Field of Dreams, like build it and then they will come. I sometimes feel like that's maybe what we need to do. And if I won Lotto tomorrow, then maybe I'd, commission the world's best accounting minds to create this set of content.
So we need to expand Amanda Loves Audit into Amanda Loves Everything to do with accounting and audit. And we can start building on this channel, right? And we can start uploading these resources maybe. We could make this happen.
Hey, look, people have suggested...
Permission from the uni. There's always the issue too, right? Because anything we create is copyright of our institution. So that's where I think...
And that's where institutions need to let it go, to be honest. I think, Harvard and Stanford are very upfront about putting a lot of material from their lectures online, and Rutgers University in the United States has Accounting Web. So Rutgers Accounting Web, it is every single lecture on every single subject they've ever given, freely available to watch online. And I think that once we move away from education being content to education being experiences, universities will feel a bit more relaxed. And I'm really lucky in that I've got an institution that is fully supportive of open access. I know that at UNSW there's a new project going on with their flipped learning team, and they're encouraging academics, hey, you make something great, make it available on YouTube. So hopefully we see more institutions moving that way.
So it's that seamless coming together of the community. Yeah.
Definitely.
Nice.
It's already there, right? Science students are already going to Crash Course. Or, they're looking at Khan Academy for finance information. It's already happening. So for me as an academic, my role is to try and curate the best. And where there's not something, make something to fill that gap. But we don't necessarily want students off searching on their own, because they might find something that is not within the right regulatory structure or has a serious fatal flaw within some thinking if it's not made by an academic that has sufficient knowledge in that area. And, you know, with AccountingPod, I would be petrified to try and teach Xero without some expertise. So, you know, it's changing those funding models. And then hopefully, you know, if I say to students, if you want more hands-on, say it in your student evaluations. All right. And then the more it's said in student evaluations, the more academics will think, oh, maybe this is something that we should think about doing, and have industry also, you know, come to us and say, well, we want them with more hands-on skill. I think if we've got many voices telling academics and the universities this story of what we need accounting graduates to have, then hopefully they'll see that change is the way we need to go in this area.
Okay, let's hear from Judith and Maha. Maha, would you like to add to the conversation?
You're muted, Maha.
Sorry, I forgot I was. Thanks, Amanda. So I think this was actually mentioned before, but I'm going to, I guess, a better focus on outcome from universities is probably one thing that I would just like to put out there, that outcome of employability. So it's either that be employability as a researcher, and, you know, there's a lot of focus on that at the moment, is that researcher just coming out of universities, but also employability in general. So if someone just wants to do something, well, let's assess how successful a university is by how they've done and how well they've been able to adapt into that industry and work in that industry and learn, you know, that continuous learning in that industry. So I think that's something that, you know, that future goal would be great to have that focus on that outcome instead of everything else, just to see, because I think that then, you know, from a big picture perspective, it trickles down and brings in all the other things that, you know, both Amy and Amanda have been talking about. So that's one thing from the education side, but from I guess a tech perspective, from Xero, is like we've got, you know, such we're really starting in this industry at the moment, and there's so much we can do. It's that collaboration that we can bring between, you know, having these chats with people like yourselves and us, and, you know, trying to bring these educators to the picture, to the conversation. And it's not just a conversation for Xero Learn, but the conversation for Xero as well. You know, the conversation of all the ecosystem apps that fit around Xero, and really having that conversation when academics are there, it gives us the ability for the academics to go back and talk to their students and actually feed back to us what the future of the industry are even talking about, because we don't know, right? So what the future accountant, bookkeepers, small business owners are talking about. So it's that really in bridging that gap and getting that collaboration happening at a really early stage, not just for Xero Learn, but for Xero itself. So I think that's, I can see that working really well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many academics, Maha, sign up for the XeroCon.
Yeah, so this is something that we're currently pushing out and trying to see. So how many come along? Look, from our perspective, so we've got a day for Xero Learn stream that we're encouraging academics to come along, but part of that we open it up to our, expo area, which is all the, you know, 80 apps that are there. So that's one we're encouraging them to go out and talk to all those apps, because they service the future of their students. So it would be really interesting. So it's coming up in September. That's a little plug right there. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see how that goes.
And a little plug from AccountingPod, who'll be there talking as well. And I guess we saw ourselves as the ability to provide that connecting experience. So, you know, we were talking about what's the future kind of look like, a little crystal ball gazing. From my observation, if we look at the marketplace right now, what does it look like? So therefore, what is required from the skill sets as they come out of the various tertiaries, right? And I kind of have this sense that we are in education technology at the early days of cloud business adoption. It just absolutely reminds me of those early days. We've got our early passionate adopters of the cloud tech, and I am seeing a lot of women in this space. Yay for the women. and we will start this journey together. It will be an exciting journey, and that messaging that you're talking about, Amanda, you know, it will build till it will get to a point where the FOMO is such that change will just have to happen, right? So you know, if we're talking about working alongside robots, which we're already doing, we're talking about those new skill sets. And I always put a plug here about not just getting a job, but the aspect of entrepreneurship, which we have seen growing globally. All of these technologies are totally geared towards that kind of thinking, because after all, entrepreneurship is about reinventing yourself, relearning, failing, getting up, starting it again, you know, and so the change in that area of the global workforce is an important indicator back to the tertiary providers of how you provide learning for life, that lifelong learning in components. And I suspect that's where this area of micro-credentialing, I think in the US they're talking about badging, and over here we're talking about micro-credentialing, has really born from where people are changing in and out and blending their careers. So I think it's an exciting time to be in what is essentially the digital age, teaching in accounting education, which to me is an absolute blend right across all of our schools within the universities. Because why do we have a large accounting or advisory firm saying we will employ from the engineering school because we want that thinking? And those people, again, need the accounting, business, financial literacy skills within their future, right? So I can see the business schools have got a huge and new opportunity to cross-sell like never before. You know, if they're worried kind of about a change in numbers because apparently accounting was boring, it's just not like that. And the other thing we've got is a new moral imperative, right, as things change. So like my Facebook kind of comment earlier, there is a moral imperative to talk about there that the business schools are very well placed to have a discussion about, right? As that system becomes more complicated, right? Yeah.
I feel like that's a very nice wrap up. We can probably talk about this all day. I'd really love to. What I'll do is, if we get any questions from the audience, we'll forward it on to the panelists so we can come do correspondence and reply to that. I just want to quickly do a round here and talk about one really interesting thing. It interests me. What gets you out of bed every morning? Yeah. Amanda, would you like...
It's my children, honestly. 5:30 in the morning, someone comes in. I mean, I'm thirsty. So that's literally what gets me out of bed in the morning. But, you know, realistically, what gets me out of bed in the morning is students getting that aha moment. And sometimes that aha moment is in the classroom. Sometimes they get it when we're having a Facebook Live chat conversation. Other times that's students who comment on a YouTube video and say, oh my gosh, this was so much clearer. And hello to Mitchell Lawton, who I can see is in the attendees list. I know that Mitchell learned audit from me from YouTube when he was at university, not at my university, at somewhere else. So it's that, you know, it's this love of education, giving students social mobility through accounting, because accounting as a career gives you a lot more options than you might have had in the past. And it's anybody can enter and become an accountant. It's a little bit easier than law, for example, where you might need to know somebody to really get ahead. But I see that the power of accounting as a tool for social mobility, a tool for, you know, good for society is what gets me up in the morning. That's a bit, I sound a bit weird now saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky, Amanda. My kids sleep in more than yours, so they're not up until about 7:30. So I do have to get up with something else in mind. They're still in bed. And look, honestly, for me, it is about the students. That is that one thing, you know, someone's dealing with bureaucracy and university policies. These kind of things can get you down a little bit on the day-to-day, you know, but it's those rewarding moments in the classroom that make you fall in love with teaching over again sometimes. So it is those moments where, you know, a student comes and goes, oh, that wasn't making any sense. And then when you sat down and we went over that, you know, now I get that. And I've had some students go out and work in audit and they come back and they say to me, the reason I got into audit is because of you. I did not find auditing boring. I found auditing interesting. I loved audit. And then I went and got my job because you brought that subject to life for me. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, this is a miracle. How do they fall for that? But, you know, but it's just amazing when you get those feedback moments, and that's when you feel like, you know, I'm making a difference in someone's life. And that's what you want with teaching, isn't it? To know that you're making a difference and you're helping shape the future and the dreams and the aspirations of that next generation going through. And that is something that always makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maha.
Yeah, so no I'm not on mute. So no kids, but a cup of coffee will get me out of the morning, guys. I think for me, it's just providing a solution, and that's what it's really been. So speaking to a lecturer or a trainer, an educator, you know, a school teacher, and they're like, oh, we've been trying to do this, it hasn't worked, and being like, actually, we can do this now. You can actually make that happen in Xero now. Or yeah, we've got the technology or the different apps that does that you can use. So just providing that solution has been really nice, and and seeing kind of their feedback after, hearing like how much time it's saved them, and it's just, you know, the feedback they're getting from their students, and the feeling that they get, that you guys are talking about their students, seeing their eyes kind of shine when they talk about how great their students are doing and their employability outcome. It's so rewarding to be in the industry and kind of and see the impact that teachers and academics and lecturers are having on their students. So, and being just part of that journey is just so rewarding, I have to say. So yeah, it's been nice.
Great. Judith.
And I have to concur, apart from the coffee, right? I really have the sense that we are at this point in education, and at this point in the impact of our digital age, and particularly, as I said, for our business schools. I think this is a really exciting time to be doing something as AccountingPod and in collaboration. That's really cool and really helps to change the face of how accounting education is delivered globally, and our opportunity in Australia and New Zealand. I believe we are early movers. So we have an opportunity to do something cool globally that leads, right? That really leads. So I'm excited about really helping make those changes within our higher ed, however we can.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So coconut yogurt. That's what gets me up in the morning. And granola. Thank you so much, team. I really enjoyed the conversation, and we'll just do our bit and keep pushing, and having these kind of conversations help to drive and speed up change, you know, in our community, and help to build it as well. So, so I'm a bit sad to say goodbye, but yeah, it's
a big thank you all as well to all the people who are online. So that I can see the attendees in line. Big hi to Craig from Caseware. He and I had a meeting the other day. So, you know, that partnership between industry and software providers and ed tech providers and accountants, that conversation, accounting academics, that conversation certainly is going strong across Australia.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Pod for having us along for this. I think
yes,
that's fantastic. So thank you very much.
No, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's keep pushing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Have a great day, team.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.